Welcome to Judaism Demystified, a podcast for the perplexed. Join us as we explore some of the most fascinating Jewish and Torah-related topics with our esteemed guests. By tackling some of the biggest questions you likely won't find addressed elsewhere, we aim to shed light on important issues and inspire a return to the fundamentals. Enjoy the show. Thank you, Hakham Faur, for joining us once again on the Judaism Demystified podcast. This is your third appearance, and I apologize for last time I didn't properly plug you. I wanted to tell everyone where they can find you, which is on Torah Andalus, which is on YouTube. So that's how they can find you. And is there anything else you would like to plug before we start the podcast?
No, that's Torah Andalus on YouTube is where I teach Torah, and I have many Torah classes both in Hebrew and in English. And on Instagram, Rabbi Abe TV is where I have more political content for those who like hearing about politics. I try to keep it separate.
All right, very good. So in the previous podcast, we spoke to you about Limud Torah and how there's no mitzvah to learn Torah all day, nor is this the point of the mitzvah. So with that being the case, what exactly, for our audience, what exactly is the mitzvah of Limud Torah, and how are we to implement it in our daily lives?
So it's an interesting question that was actually discussed in the Gemara. So there's a Gemara in Masechet Berachot where Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai and Rabbi Ishmael, two great Tanaim, they each offer a different perspective on the following question. One has to work. We have to make a living. We need to go out to the field. We need to plow the field. We need to seed the field. We need to eventually harvest the bounty. So Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai says, no, that doesn't make sense. If we're always working in the field, when are we going to study? We won't be able to study. So he says one should study Torah all the time. That's his opinion, and that's what he did, by the way. With his son, Rabbi Elazar. They were studying Torah all the time in the Me'ara, and he was of the opinion that that's what you need to do. Now, before we even continue, I want to tell you what Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai does not say, because many people bring the opinion of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai as a supposed support for the Kolel lifestyle, where the Kolel lifestyle says, all I'm going to do is study Torah all the time, I'm not going to work. And here you see Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai is the model for that. So it's
they bring him as the ideal. They bring him as the ideal.
Exactly, he's the ideal, correct. So I just want to, before we even continue, Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai did not receive a monthly stipend from anyone, nor does he suggest that one should do so. Meaning, Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai's point is not live off the public dole and beg people for money and then come from Israel to New York on El Al flights and try to collect money from different synagogues and then go back to Israel and study. That's incorrect. Meaning that is not what Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai said. He never said that. What the Gemara says is, this is in Masechet Shabbat in Daf Lamed Gimel, that Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai was in the cave and a miracle of sorts happened. He lived off a carob tree, and he ate carobs all day. He drank water. There was a well, and that was it. That's how he lived, right? So the notion, I want to make sure that everybody understands. We're not talking about the Kolel lifestyle. The question that Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai addresses is: should one work, or should one rely on miracles, essentially, or live a life of poverty and rely on miracles and everything will be fine? And he says, no, one should live a life of poverty, or he doesn't say that actually, but he says essentially rely on a miracle. Okay, a miracle happened for him. Indeed, he was happy. He had the carob tree and he was happy and he ate that and he didn't need anything else, and that was great. But Bishmael in the Gemara says, no. He says, no, one has to work. And if it's time to harvest the field, harvest the field. And if it's time to seed the field and do what you need to do to make a parnasah and study Torah and combine the two. Now, very interesting. Usually the Gemara, it has many, many disputes, but it doesn't always conduct an experiment for the purpose of resolving the disputes. This is one of the interesting cases in the Gemara where they say, you know what? We want to do an experiment. Let's do an experiment. Let's see who's correct. And the Gemara says, and I'm going to read it for you. It's in Masechet Berachot Daf Lamed He Amud Bet, and give me a moment just to find it. Masechet Berachot. I'm on Safaria now, and I'm just gonna, would it be okay if would it make sense, or would it be useful for me to share
Yeah, of course.
the,
Of course, yeah.
okay, so let me see if I can share it. Give me a moment, share.
Okay, I
Okay.
just gave you access to share. So
Thank you. And this is share. Okay. Now, I'm sharing now the Mishnah Torah, but that's not what I want to share. I just switched. Do you see the Gemara now, or do you still see the Mishnah Torah?
we see the Gemara.
We see the
Okay,
Gemara.
perfect. So look what it says. It says, I'm pointing it. Amar Abaye. So Abaye is several generations, of course, after Rabbi Ishmael and Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. And he says he was the Rosh Hashiva of Fom Bedita. And he says as follows: Harbe asu keRabbi Ishmael ve'aleta be'adan. KeRabbi Shimon Bar Yochai ve'lo aleta be'adan. Many people did follow the model of Rabbi Ishmael, and it worked. Now, when it says ve'aleta be'adan, what does it mean ve'aleta be'adan? It means the Torah they studied was a successful Torah. And the Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, many people did what he did. Now, when Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai did it, he was successful. It worked. He had a special zechut. I'm not sure what it was. Special, I don't know, knowledge, kedusha, whatever you want to attribute it to. When Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai did it to himself, it worked. But when other people tried to follow him as a model, it didn't work. What does it mean it didn't work? It means the Torah didn't work. Meaning, when you have an unlimited amount of time to study, number one, and number two, you have no financial responsibilities, and you think you're going to fill it up and do nothing but study Torah all day, it didn't work. Right? Now, furthermore, Rabba was also he was a contemporary of Avaya, and he was also the Rosh Yeshiva of Fom Bedita, and he says the following: Bematuta minaychu, please, I'm asking you, do me a favor. Beyomeni sanu b'yomet tishrei la tithazu kamai. I'm asking, he's talking to the Talmidim in the yeshiva. Please don't appear in the yeshiva in the month of Nisan. Don't appear in the yeshiva in the month of Tishrei. La tithazu kamai. Don't be in my presence. You're kicked out. Because during these seasons, agricultural work was very important. And if you come to the yeshiva instead of working, you're going to be, the whole year, you're going to be worried about parnasa. I don't want you to worry about parnasa. You can't study Torah properly if you're worried about parnasa. So this is the third consideration, meaning I spoke about consideration number one, when you have all day to do nothing and all you have to do is study and you have no financial responsibilities in terms of work obligations, not the ideal situation. It doesn't stimulate the mind. But also the other consideration is when a person lives in poverty, he can't study. He has, I have to pay the electric bill. I have to pay the rent. I have to buy food for my children. So that's why Rabba says, I don't want you coming to the yeshiva on the months that you have to work, because otherwise it would affect your parnasa. I want you out of the yeshiva, right? And finally, and I want to read to you this statement. Amar Abba Bar Hanna, Amar Rabbi Yochanan, Mishum Rabbi Yehuda v'Rabbi Ilai. Look how, unfortunately, the latter generations are not meeting the standards set forth by the earlier generations. How? דורות הראשונים עשו תורתם קבע ומלאכתם ארעי, זו וזו נתקיימה בידם. דורות האחרונים שעשו מלאכתם קבע ותורתם ארעי, זו וזו לא נתקיימה בידם. He said, the earlier generations, they made the Torah the keva. I'm going to explain what keva means in a moment. Keva means something permanent. Emlachtam arai. Arai means something less permanent. I will explain that. Zuva zunit kaima bedam. They were successful at work. They were successful in Torah. The latter generations, for them, the main thing in life was the work. Melachtam keva. The main thing was work. But Toratam arai. The secondary thing was Torah, and they didn't succeed neither in work nor in Torah. So that's what the Gemara says. So the Gemara discusses this the matter, and basically what you see here, I'm just going to do stop share. Okay, what you see in that latter discussion was everybody worked, right? Meaning the Dorot HaRishonim worked, the Dorot HaAharonim worked. The question is whether the work is keva and the melacha, which is work, whether the melacha is keva and the Torah is arai, or is the Torah keva and the melacha arai? So my father, alav shalom, he explained to me, what does it mean, melachtan, that the work is keva and the Torah is arai, or vice versa? So he said, when you study Torah, what's the main thing you want to accomplish that day? You want to study Torah. That's the main thing. Meaning, you feel if there was Labor Day and you didn't work, you don't say, "Oh my gosh, what a waste of a day." You don't say that, right? But if you didn't study Torah that day, meaning usually you study Torah 2-3 hours, and you didn't study Torah, you say, "Oh my gosh, I feel like I didn't do what I'm supposed to do today." Meaning, the Torah is keva. If in your mind you're saying, "This is what I must do," there's no way I'm not studying Torah today. I am studying Torah today. Come hell or high water, I'm studying Torah, because if I don't study Torah, I had a waste of a day. You don't say that about work. You're okay. I got a day off. This is amazing. Let's go to the beach, right? You understand? So that's what it means, keva versus arai. I want to read to you, and actually I want to have a conversation with you. Let me talk to you about this. I think there's a psychological element here. The psychological element is when a person has responsibilities, he needs to think about what he's going to do to make a living. He has children who he needs to feed. He has a wife. He has a house. He has responsibilities. These responsibilities, they help the individual mature, become serious, and be more focused. When a person has nothing to do all day, and I remember I used to see this. I used to go to the kollel. I used to study in the kollel. I didn't get paid, but the people around me did. It's okay. I'm not God forbid, I'm not criticizing the people I studied with, but that's the way it was. Okay, so they got their monthly stipend, and that's fine. But I noticed I was between college and law school. I had 1 year to study. Okay, in that 1 year, I did what usually takes 4 years. Not because I'm a genius, not because I'm brilliant. I knew I just have 1 year to study, right? I better really. So I used to come into the place like there'd be a Ted Ne'eman newspaper, a banana, a yogurt. Okay, well, they want to eat breakfast. Again, I'm not saying this to be disrespectful. I'd come into the place and I'd literally be like focused on the text, because this is the time I have to study Torah. And I knew it. And I finished the whole Rabbanut, all of the tests for the Rabbanut that normally take 4 years. I did it in 1 year. So I think the idea of working and studying Torah is not only it's not a detriment, it's not something, I think it's a very good thing. I think people who work and study Torah, they do better at work and they do better with the Torah. And that's what the Gemara said. That's what the Gemara says. Zu v'zu al tavei adam. I want to finish just with reading with you, with your permission, what Rambam writes on the topic. And then I will let you ask any follow-up questions. So let's do share. Okay, and where is Rambam? Here it is. I'm going to read it for you here. Amru Hachamim. No, here it is. This is Al-Chot Talmud Torah, Perek Gimel, Halacha Yod Aleph. Ma'ala gedola hi. This is a great thing. It's a tremendous ma'ala. That's what he says. And he didn't make this up. This is from the guy we read the Gemara last week, I think, right? Mesorah Berachot, Daf Yud Aleph, and also the Perkei Avot, Perek Bet, right? Rabban Gamliel, Beno shel Rabbi Yehuda Nasi. Umidaf Hasidim Harishonim here. This is the real Hasidut. You want to know what a Hasid is? Hasid is a person who works hard, and even though he works hard, he also studies Torah. ובזה זוכה לכל כבוד וטובה שבעולם הזה מול עולם הבא, שנאמר, יגיע כפיך כי תאכל אשריך וטוב לך. Straight out of the Gemara that we studied last week. So the idea that work is something negative is anti-Torah. The Christians, they used to believe that. That's true. In Christianity, work was something negative because it belonged to this world. So you had the monasteries, and the people in the monasteries, they didn't work, and But in Judaism, at least, we're talking about Judaism here. From the perspective of Judaism, work is a good thing. There's nothing nicer than an honest and hard day of work, and then at the end of the day of work, you study Torah, or the beginning of the day, or the middle of the day, whenever you kovei itim la Torah, make those permanent times for Talmud Torah. That's how you make the mitzvah of Talmud Torah.
And it makes a lot of sense, because what work does for a person is it gives him discipline. That's in order to work properly, work correctly, you have to have discipline and purpose with your time. And that carries over when you're going to learn Torah. That's exactly what's going to carry over and what's going to make your learning Torah successful.
And also it allows you to apply, everything you study with Torah, you can apply it to work, vice versa, right? So it really feeds off of each other.
The work brings the experience of the Torah into action. Yeah.
Yeah, and by the way, we say in the tefillah every day, in Ahavat Olam Ahavtanu, when we talk about Talmud Torah, Lishmor, La'asot, Lekayem, et kol divrei Talmud Toratecha be'ahava. The goal of the Torah is to be able to implement the Torah in our daily lives. Now, if a person who does nothing but study, and he doesn't go out into the world, and he interact with people and contribute to the society by working or by doing other things, so that person is missing out on the ability to implement the Torah in his daily life. So part of Talmud Torah is to study Torah so that you can fulfill the Torah in the real world. So when you go outside, you say berachot, you see people, you're kind with people, right? You try to bring some good to the world. That's part of Talmud Torah, right? So Talmud Torah is a foundation for proper behavior. But you need to go out to the world and interact in order to have that proper behavior.
When did this start? This whole the whole kollel mindset or implementation. How did we get here?
I don't know, but
You're not prepared.
But I know two things. I know that in the days of Rambam, there were some people who used to do that, apparently, because he writes about it in a very, very, he's usually not ferocious when he writes things. In this case, he's ferocious. He says these people that they accept money to study Torah, they're extinguishing mechabim or hadat, literally extinguishing the light of our law, right? Meaning the Torah brings light to the world, and these people, they extinguish light. He's really ferocious. I've never seen Rambam almost. Maybe there's other cases where he's so ferocious, but this
says they have no share in the world to come also.
Yeah, I mean, he said melastemim et beriot, right? Of course, correct. Now, I also think that, well, I don't want to get into the details of this, but let's say just as follows. I think there was some assimilation here. In my own opinion, I'm not going to support that opinion other than to say that in Judaism, in the Gemara, we didn't have it. And in the Middle Ages, when we were exposed to Christian society, we did have it. Can I prove it? No, I admit I can't prove it, but that's my own that's my own instinct. But nevertheless, we are here now, and we know what the Torah expects of us, and we know the Torah expects us to work. And it's great if you can work and have a good job and make good money and bring blessing to your family through your hard work. What a tremendous zechut it is as a Jew to do so.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for that. Thank you for that, Hakham. Okay. So this question is going to touch upon the major work of your father, Alav Shalom, Horizontal Society.
Yeah.
We're going to ask it in context of the concept of Daas Torah and Gedolim, which has pretty much become the norm in Haredi Judaism today. I'll read the question. The influence of Haredi leaders often hinges on the concepts of Gedolim and Daas Torah. The idea that Torah scholars have the ultimate authority in all matters, even beyond halacha. Do you believe these concepts are consistent with Torah values? What are your thoughts on the role and interpretation of these ideas within the Haredi community? And if you could also tie this in with the major idea and work of your father, horizontal society, which is really goes hand in hand with this question.
Yeah. Let me start with the first part of the question. In Judaism, the ultimate source of authority as a Jew, as Jews, we know that Moshe Rabbeinu was the Shaliach of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. He was God's representative to the Jewish people, and he was the representative of the Jewish people to God. And we know that God spoke the Torah to Moshe Rabbeinu. We know this not because somebody told us. We know this not because we made some sort of inductive or deductive reasoning. We know this because when HaKadosh Baruch Hu spoke to Moshe Rabbeinu, we experienced that speech, right? The pasuk says, "Hine anochi ba elecha be'av he'anan, ba'abur yishma ha'am bedaberi imach, ve'gam becha ya'aminu le'olam." This is the ultimate pasuk in defining the source of authority. Says God to Moshe Rabbeinu, I am now going to appear to you in the thick fog or cloud. Of course, the Shekhinah doesn't just appear, so there's an Anan, right? Be'amud Anan yidabel alehem. We know other Nevi'im had the Zechut where the Shekhinah descended and it came in the form of an Anan because you can't see the Shekhinah in that sense. Why am I doing this? I want the Jewish people to hear when I speak with you. I want them to experience me speaking with you. And why? Because when they experience this, they would have had a direct experience of God speaking to Moshe. And therefore they have no doubt. We have no doubt. The nation as a nation experience God speaking to Moshe Rabbeinu. So the ultimate source of authority is Moshe. Only Moshe, and no one else but Moshe, has the right to speak in the name of God and say, these are the Taryag Misvot. These are the 613 Misvot. You may never subtract, and you may never add, and you may never modify the misvot as a representative of God, meaning of God. You can't say, oh, until now we were praying once a day. God told me that from now on we have to be praying thrice a day. You can't do that. You cannot modify the Torah because the Torah was given to Moshe Rabbeinu. We experience God speaking to Moshe Rabbeinu, and any deoraita law comes exclusively and solely from Moshe Rabbeinu. This is the foundation of all of Judaism. So any authority other than Moshe Rabbeinu is a secondary authority. What does that mean? By secondary authority, we mean as follows: that while Moshe Rabbeinu gave us the deoraita laws, right? Harambam refers to this as the usul. In Arabic, uses the word usul, like it's like you have a tree, and the tree has the trunk. It's a stable. It never changes, but the trunk has many branches. That's called the furu. The furu is like the offshoots of the tree. So the usul comes from Moshe Rabbeinu. That never changes. And nobody can give us another usul. Nobody can come and say, you know what, God spoke to me. I had a dream. I'm a Navi. An angel spoke to me. We don't care. We don't care. I mean, it's nice. If somebody has a dream, it's great. I have dreams all the time. I don't mean that facetiously. I have dreams of Torah all the time. As much as I love these dreams and I'm very enamored of myself having these dreams, I recognize that this is not a source of law, right? Meaning, I'm not going to wake up in the morning and tell my wife, honey, you have to pray 4 times a day. I just saw that in a dream. No, it's meaningless from the perspective of authority, of meaning me becoming an authority as to what the Torah says or doesn't say. My dreams, my intuition, my greatness, or somebody else's dreams or somebody else's greatness. is not relevant to the question of authority. So there is primary authority lies with Moshe Rabbeinu. Secondary authority, that lies with the judicial and legislative body of the Jewish people, which is known as the Sanhedrin or the Beit Din HaGadol. We don't always have a Sanhedrin of 71. That was in the Lishkat HaGazit in the Beit HaMikdash. Later on, the Beit HaMikdash was destroyed, so we had a Beit Din HaGadol. And this authority is a secondary authority. It is created by the Torah in Parashat Shofetim explicitly. So they have authority, but that authority derives from the 613 Mesorah that Moshe Rabbeinu gave us, right? So nobody reaches the level of Moshe Rabbeinu. Now, if the Sanhedrin or the Beit Din HaGadol makes a Pesach Halacha, they can make a Gezerah, a decree, a Takana, they can make a Minhag, there's many things that Beit Din HaGadol can do. Of course, they cannot undo anything that Moshe Rabbeinu gave us, but in the furu, in the branches, they can make new rules. I'll give you an example. Just so you see where I'm coming from. The Moshe Rabbeinu told us, Zachor et Yom HaShabbat lekadesho. Okay, remember the Shabbat or declare. Usually, Zachor in Jewish thinking is to say something, right? To make a declaration about a past event, right? So make a declaration. Hachamim say, Zochrehu alayayin. They can do that. They have the authority. They have the authority to interpret Zachor that was given to us by Moshe Rabbeinu. Moshe Rabbeinu didn't give us too many details as to how we make that declaration. The Hachamim said, we want to explain this. That's called the Din Mufla. You're going to be making that declaration on a cup of wine. Okay, they can do that. You understand? Now, as far as individuals, do individuals have any authority as such? The answer is an individual has authority to the extent that he's telling you what the halacha is, meaning no individual has the right to make up laws. No individual can say, the halacha is like this because I said so, because I'm greater than you, because I'm smarter than you. That's not the way Judaism works. We love smart people. We love great people, of course, needless to say. But the Jewish system works as follows. You either are founded on the primary authority of Moshe Rabbeinu, the secondary authority of the Sanhedrin, acting as the legislative and judicial body of the Jewish people, or there's no authority. So, for example, in my opinion, we shouldn't have fish and chips. I think fish and chips shouldn't go together. One is negative energy, the other is positive energy. The fish is fried in oil and the chips is fried in oil. Okay, fine. It's a nice idea that we have mixed the negative and the positive and you destroy the world. Okay, maybe I'm right. Maybe the world will get destroyed, but I have no authority as an individual to create a law that wasn't given to us either by the Sanhedrin or by Moshe Rabbeinu. Right? So, and even if I'm great, even if I'm the greatest person alive, I'm the smartest person, the greatest person alive, I can stick a needle through the Talmud and I'll tell you exactly, stop the needle. Okay, you're on the word Amam now. And you open it up and there it is right there, the word Amam. That's where the needle stopped. That's very impressive. But that's not the basis for authority. You understand? So this is an important point. I think I don't need to say more on that particular topic unless you want me to address it. There's a other second part of the question. Before I get to the second part of the question, I just want to see whether you have any follow-ups.
Well, what people will say today is that, like you mentioned, the individual, but what people will say is, well, the majority today think a certain way, and the majority rules is no longer applicable. So I think that's something that needs to be kind of clarified.
Meaning, if the entire religious Jewish world have embraced this way of hierarchy or way of doing things,
the Daas Torah,
then who are we to come and now,
yeah, we're just a minority opinion.
How could you say this? How could have not, I'm not going to say a name, but let's say, how can this Gadol have not known what you're saying right now?
Right. Okay. I mean, let's unpack it in a few different directions. So first of all, The fact that everybody says something or everybody does something is irrelevant. It either conforms with the halacha or it doesn't conform with the halacha. The basis for Jewish law and for Jewish behavior is what the halacha says. It's not what everyone does. There is no basis for the idea that because everybody says something, we must do it. The pasuk Harei Rabim lehatot means very simply that when you have the Sanhedrin, there could be a disagreement in the Sanhedrin. They're going to have a vote and they're going to do a majority vote. It doesn't mean that if you have another 35 Amnei Haaretz who don't know halacha, that they all think that we have to turn the back to the Hechal during Lechad Dodi, that we have to turn the back to the Hechal during Lechad Dodi. I mean, that's just ignorance, right? So I'll give you a great example in halacha. Rambam brings the following law in Hilchot Matanot LaAniyim. He brings a law. This is a great example, actually. I like this example. So let's say the halacha is that somebody has to leave pe'ah. This is actually Parashat Kiteseh, right? This week's Parashat brought the law of pe'ah. Okay, it brought the law of pe'ah in the case of actually trees, but okay. In Parashat Kedoshim, it brings the law of pe'ah as well in the context of the field. So it says like this: the law of pe'ah is the anim go in, and they get to harvest a particular portion of the field. That's the way it works. So if I'm a big guy and I'm strong, I probably get more than that person over there. Maybe he's small and he's weak. Oh, but that's the way the law works. Now, let's say there's 10 anim. Rambam brings the following case. There's 10 poor people, and none of them say, you know what, guys, this isn't nice. We're going to go into the field. We're all going to be fighting. Everybody's going to be trying to get more than the other. How about we have the following idea? Let's all go in together. We'll divide everything equally, Stephen even. And the one ani says, no, that's not the halacha. I don't want to do it that way. Who do we listen to?
Ani.
We listen to that one ani. Because the pasuk says, "Lo tiyeh acharei rabim lera'ot." The same pasuk that says "acharei rabim le'atot" says, "Lo tiyeh acharei rabim lera'ot." You do not follow the mistaken view of the majority. So this that the majority does something is a complete irrelevancy. I mean, there is we're not a democracy. You know, since when Jewish law does not depend on the democratic will of the people. I mean, with all due respect, that's nonsensical.
With the Rav's permission, can I just go a little bit more into that for a second, if possible?
Yeah.
And I'm basing this off of discussions that I've had with many people. People who want to serve God properly. They mean well and they want to understand.
Of course, my assumption is everybody wants to do so.
Yes. Yeah, I'm just saying it for the audience.
Of course.
I think that the problem that a lot of people have is that to them, if the overwhelming or the prevailing system of Daas Torah and Gedolim is basically the prevailing system, to them, if this is a incorrect system, then in their minds, what's going on, and this is coming from a little bit of they think, well, how could have Hashem allowed for such a grave error to essentially take over for hundreds of years now, where like to them it's like, why would Hashem steer us so wrong? I mean, all we're trying to do is follow the great rabbis and so we can serve Hashem. If the system is incorrect and we've been led astray, you know, with not on purpose necessarily, but from just the incorrect system, why would Hashem allow that? Why would Hashem allow such a situation to exist? From my conversations with people, some of them say it outright, some of them don't say it outright, but my feeling is that this is really what's going on inside them. That's giving them a hard time understanding this.
Yeah. I mean, let me say the following. The Mashiach didn't come yet, did he?
No.
So the notion that there's nothing we can do to improve ourselves, one might say it's a bit arrogant. Since when did God when did God tell Jeremiah, I know you're all making a mistake, that's really my fault. I shouldn't be letting you do that. Is that the way Judaism works? I thought the way it works is we do a lot of bad things, and that's why God sends the Nevi'im. We finally decided to kill off the Nevi'im, and God said, you know what, enough of that, right? As long as we didn't kill them off, though, God kept sending more and more and more Nevi'im to try to like tell us, guys, you're doing this wrong. This isn't what I want, right? That's all God can do, right? I mean, God doesn't, the idea of the hierarchical sheet, and this is one of the foundations of Judaism, is that we choose. And we can choose to do bad things, and many times we do very bad things. God's not going to interfere in our lives. The consequences of what we do, yeah, he might punish us. I didn't say he's not going to punish us or reward us. Right? But the notion that somehow, why would God let us do something wrong? God's not letting us do something wrong. God gave us the Torah. God gave us the mitzvot. God gave us Harambam to write the Mishneh Torah and the Gemara and all the great Hachamim who are teaching us Torah. And now we're going to blame God for our fault. Why didn't God teach us? He did teach us.
So the problem is, and really what this really stems from is from when people are in yeshiva early on, the concept that is being drilled, especially when they're young, into their minds is hashgacha pratit. And when we say hashgacha pratit in yeshiva, it's not hashgacha pratit, with a limud iyun and what exactly that entails, doesn't entail. You read, and you don't have to go to the you don't have to go to Harambam. You can go to all the Rishonim. All the Rishonim have a hard time getting to the bottom of hashgacha pratit. It's not a simple concept, but what's happening is that this concept is being thrown out there. Thank you. Oversimplification, and it's being etched in their mind so that it's very difficult for them to see anything outside of, well, if Hashem wanted it to happen, it happens. This is what's happening. No, it's chaval, yeah. And I'm lamenting it, but it is what's going on.
They're putting the onus on God. That's the problem.
This is the root of the problem. This oversimplification and not a no rigor in.
But here's I think
these important
if I can maybe get into a little bit more than that.
I apologize.
I think the issue that they're having in the Daas Torah world is that they've put kind of, it's not about putting the onus on God, but they kind of, I hate to say it, but kind of deification of the rabbis, where the rabbi cannot make a mistake. So if the rabbi is in the place of kind of like, if he's in the place of, he's a spokesperson for God, how can we question whether or not, like, who am I to say anything? Are you the Ben Ishai? Are you the, that's always what they throw at you. And if you dare challenge such a notion, you're ostracized. So I think that's really, I don't want.
There is that notion. It comes from Christianity, of course, because in Judaism, and one of the fundamental mitzvot in Judaism is Torah sivalanu Moshe morasha keilat Yaakov. We teach our children the Torah. We teach them the Torah shebe'al peh. We teach them the Torah shebichtav. We teach them how to read. We teach them how to connect letters. And part of being a Jew, and every Jew, has an obligation to study Torah and to understand the laws in the Torah. This is not a law that applies to the so-called Gedolim, right? Every individual has an obligation to study. Now, we have an entire Masechet in the Gemara. It's called Masechet Torayot. What happens if the holiest person in Am Yisrael, the Kohen Gadol, makes a mistake? Kohen Gadol? What? No, did you just say the Kohen Gadol? Isn't he the one who goes into the Kodesh HaKodashim? Who are you to speak about the Kohen Gadol? Well, I mean, if he makes a mistake, he made a mistake, right? And we have a Torah. The Torah is a very, it's an equal standard to all, right? It applies the same to the Kohen Gadol as it applies to a simple pauper harvesting field in the wheat. Right? Harvesting wheat in the field, right? It doesn't matter who it is now. Masechet Torayot also deals with another situation. What if the political authority makes a mistake? Because there's people who have ideological concepts about the leader, or whether it's the head of the Communist Party, or whether, well, I don't want to talk about contemporary politics, but I think you all know what I was about to say. Doesn't matter. The point is people, they have an irrational feeling about leaders who can't make mistakes. So are you saying the king can make a mistake? Well, yes, according to Masechet Torayot, he can. It's a Perashat Vayikra, right? Okay, but what about the Gedolim? Oh, Masechet Torayot also deals with the greatest doilim of the Jewish people. They're sitting in the Sanhedrin, right? These Gedolim, what happens if they make a mistake? Huh, how can we say that? So how can we say this? The answer is we're not Christians. That's all. Very simple.
We don't
So
have saints.
if you want to have a Christian epistemology and say, yes, we have saints, we have we can't make a mistake, no problem. I mean, fair enough. Choose your religion and then go accordingly. You want Christianity? You have saints. You want Judaism? You have people or human beings. Rabbi Akiva supported Bar Kokhba. It looks like he might have been wrong about that. I mean, I think the 90% of the Jewish population of Judea that was massacred by the Romans might say that the Rabbi Akiva, who, by the way, I consider him to be maybe one of the greatest Tanaim ever, like simply one of the great, like if it wasn't for Rabbi Akiva, I don't know where we would be today, because he's the one who started this whole organization of the Torah Shebe'al Peh that eventually was completed by Rabbeinu HaKadosh. Put that on the side. I think that 90% of the Jews that were massacred by the Romans pursuant to the Bar Kokhba, 90% of the Jews in Judea that were massacred by the Romans pursuant to the Bar Kokhba revolution might think that he made a mistake in supporting Bar Kokhba. So this whole notion is completely Christian and foreign to Judaism. I mean, you don't see anything like this in the Gemara. You don't see this in the Sifra, the Sifred, the Mechilta. Did you ever hear anybody say anything like, who are you? And where do you see that?
I think that's the most beautiful thing about the Tanakh, is that it's just recording all of our mistakes, our leaders, our holy ones, us, everybody.
Even
We're
Moshe
just
Rabbeinu.
even Moshe, even David, they're constantly making mistakes. And that's the whole point. The whole point of it is that, like, we are allowed to make mistakes. We're expected to make mistakes. And all of a sudden today, it's a different structure. It's like dynastic leadership. Father passes away and his son becomes the leader. And that wasn't the way it was. So this is what we're dealing with today. It's very difficult to have these kinds of conversations because you can kind of get quote unquote canceled.
And I want to make clear, because it's a sensitive topic, and this is not about in any way to demean or to, it's not about that. It's a problem which we want to contribute towards getting to a healthier place overall for the Haredim, for ourselves, for everyone. It's not about putting anyone down. It's not about disrespecting Chas v'Chalila. It's about identifying a problem and seeing how we can go about and fixing it. That's all it is right now.
Yeah, of course. Look, I agree. I think that people are misinformed. I think we discussed in the last podcast that because we live in a Western society, Western norms are more attractive to us. And therefore, I speak about Christianity, the idea that we somehow live in Christian countries and we wouldn't get affected by them. I mean, my father, that's one of the things he discusses in The Shadow of History. He shows a clear relationship between some of the trends in some parts of Spain, in some parts of Germany, in some parts of France, and Christian trends that were taking place, and which eventually led to the Haredi against Harambam, right, in Barcelona and other places. So why would we think that we are immune from mental assimilation to Christian values, where we see that we're actually imitating the Christians in their view of sainthood? I mean, it's very obvious what's happening. That this is foreign to Judaism. This is foreign to the Torah. Again, we have an entire Masechet based on the end of Parashat Vayikra, Asher Nasi Yahita, and that's a king. Ve'im me'aneha kahal ne'ista bishkaga. If they made a mistake, the Sanhedrin, the greatest Gedolim ever, what happens if they made a mistake? It's right there in the Torah, given to us by Moshe Rabbeinu.
Amazing.
Yep.
And for part 2, because your father's book, Horizontal Society, it's impossible to put it in a few minutes, but we're going to ask you to try anyway. If you could talk about the book, it does apply to what we've been talking now with Gedolim, but also in general, if you can talk about Horizontal Society.
Okay. Chapter 5 of Pirkei Avot. In the middle of the chapter, it has a list of things, 10 things, that were created ben Shemashot. Asara devarim nivreu Be'erev Shabbat, ben hashemashot. 10 things were created, meaning after God finished the creation, there was an additional 10 things that were created during the twilight, right? And then it has a list, miraculous things, Pi ha'aretz, the earth that opened up and swallowed Korah. Pi ha'be'er, the water that followed the Jewish people 40 years through the desert, and other things. Pi ha'aton, the aton speaks beautifully, right? Lama zehikitani. Other things. Then towards the end of the list, it has the following two words: haketav, ve'hamichtav. Usually the word ketav, milashon lichtov, it's interpreted to mean the letters, meaning aleph, bet, gimel, daled, he, and writing. It's not clear though. What does that mean? Letters and writing. What's the distinction between letters, the writing? It's not entirely, this concept hasn't been fully developed. Rabbeinu Hananel, he says the following. He associates the ketav, like the standard explanation, with the actual letters. But then he says the michtav is the ability to connect the letters and create words. Or if I may put it in more scientific terms, there is a mental faculty that allows a person to look at letters and join the letters and recognize words which have specific meanings. So I want to look at this a little more deeply. And this is all from my father in horizontal society. Okay, so obviously I give credit where credit is due, needless to say. So ketav is the ability, it's not just letters, it's the ability to create a visual system of signs. The signs are letters, but these signs, they stand for phonetic sounds. It's very interesting. For example, in Egyptian hieroglyphics, the signs stand for a particular thing out there in the world, right? So maybe something looks like a cow, a picture of a cow represents the cow in the actual world. But what's amazing here is that you have this ketav system, and the ketav system, it's letters, and they stand for phonetics. Okay, but there's something even deeper here in the Hebrew language, because in American, in English rather, the letters have vowels. So when you look at a word, C, A is a vowel, T. So you put the letters together, right? The ketav, and you have the word cat. What's interesting is that in Jewish writing, the letters stand for consonants, right? So what you have in Jewish writing is an unpronounceable phonetic sound. That's crazy. Right? So we have this system, what we call the aleph bet, which are actually unpronounceable sounds, right? So when you have a text and you open up the Torah and you want to read the Torah, what you have is an unpronounceable sequence of letters. Each one of these letters is a different consonant standing for a different phonetic sound. Now you understand the michtav system. The michtav system is the mental process and the apparatus through which these unpronounceable consonants are synthesized by adding vowels and then joined together to make readable words. So that's the ketav system and the michtav system. It's really what when the Hachamim said asara devarim nivru ben hashemashot, and it gives you all these miracles, and then you see ketav and michtav, you say, what's so miraculous about ketav and michtav? But the fact that our mind can create this ketav system, or maybe the alphabet was given, doesn't matter. Either way, our mind got it, right? This is an amazing thing. Why would anybody, I can understand why you make hieroglyphics, okay? I want to sell my cow. I'm going to make a picture of a cow. Cow, I give it to you, whatever, right? What is this thing about letters, right? And unpronounceable letters, because no vowels in Hebrew in the writing, right? Now, I want to just say this. one of the great differences between the Torah and the Quran, for example, is that, as I said, the Torah has no vowels. The reader needs to supply the vowels. The Quran has a vocalized text. It's called the harakat, right? On the other hand, a Sefer, which has vowels. Now, a Sefer Torah, which has vowels, is pasul. You can't read from it in public, right? So what we see here is that in order to generate meaning, in order to transform this series of non-pronounceable phonetic symbols into something readable with meaning, there has to be an interaction between the reader and the text, right? So when God communicates to the Jewish people, he communicates to the Jewish people through the system, either the written text, but when he speaks, the pasuk says, "V'chol ha'am ro'im et hakolot."
You saw the sounds.
Now, these sounds are the unpronounceable phonetic, let's call it aleph, bet, gimel, no vowels, right? So God is speaking to a people, to a nation who are alphabetic and who can take the kolot and they can hear Anochi Adonai Elohecha Asher Hoseticha Me'eres Mitzrayim Mibet Avadim Lo Yeh Lecha Elim Acharim Panai, etc., etc., etc. God is speaking to an alphabetic people. That's almost miraculous, by the way, that we have the ability to do that, right? So that's one type of intelligence. Hebrew intelligence is alphabetic intelligence. And we spoke last week a little about Greek, where everything is visual. There's these things, shapes, and Hebrew, where hearing, and we connect things, right? So let's look at the other world. Let's look at what my father refers to as analphabetic speech, right? So an analphabetic speech, and most people, this is most Gentiles, most Jews as well, unfortunately, there is an analphabetic aspect to speech which predominates a lot of discourse today, where there is a certain phonetic contour to words, and this phonetic contour represents the actual thing, right? This is related to metaphysics, where in metaphysics you have objective truths. So the purpose of speech is to conjure up that truth. Let me read to you. Let me see if I can find this. Let me read to you what Ernst Cassirer says. He was a prominent figure in the Neo-Kantian movement, and he explored some of these ideas of analphabetic. And if you just give me a moment, I think I did this before. Yes, here it is. The notion that the name, meaning the word, and essence, meaning what the word signifies, bear a necessary and internal relation to each other, that the name does not merely denote, but actually is the essence of its object. This is magical thinking. So abracadabra is from the Hebrew word evra, evra, kadabra, as I speak, because in analphabetic speech, the word contains the essence of the thing. Now, let me ask you a question. So if there was a truth out there that is independent of text, let's say, and this truth just exists out there, and then the words somehow capture this truth, who can tell us what that truth is? Now, in Jewish alphabetic thinking, truth derives from text, because the text was spoken to the Jewish people, and we have alphabetic minds, and we generate meaning by interacting with the text. So the ultimate frame of reference for any system, from any truth, is the Torah, right? There's two books, actually. We have the Torah and we have the cosmological book, the creation of the universe. But let me ask you, in the case of metaphysics, in the case of analphabetic thinking, who's going to tell me what the truth out there is? What do you think? How can I know? Maybe I'm a simple person. So, so the answer is you need what's called, and I'm probably mispronouncing this word, but you need what's called the European Menschentums, which basically is analogous to the idea of the Gadol. The European Menschentums is an individual who has some sort of access to the infinite because he's a philosopher and he's been versed in the philosophies, and this person will guide us to the truth. I'm a simple person. I never studied philosophy. I never opened up the book of Aristotle. I once tried to open up Plato's Republic, but I fell asleep after about 15 seconds. So I need a European Menschentums to tell me the truth, right? Does that sound familiar to anybody here? So why am I saying all this? So you have these two systems of truth. One is metaphysical, where you need a European Menschentum, like a Gadol, and the other is textual, alphabetic. Those are the two systems of truth in the world. As a Jew, I feel that it's our responsibility to study the text of the Torah and to use the text of the Torah as the ultimate source for truth. And it doesn't mean that I exclude other people, of course not. But the ultimate criteria for truth will be determined by the Torah and the authorities that the Torah establishes. That's in stark contrast to the vertical society. So in a horizontal society, my parents taught me how to read. My father, alav shalom, brought Mickey Carey, alav shalom, to my house. I know how to read Pesukim in the Torah. I know how to read the whole Torah, from the book of Bereshit to the book of Divrei Hayamim. I know the rules of reading. I know the ta'amim for each book. I read perfectly. Baruch Hashem, my father taught me, right? I read. I know what the words say. And furthermore, I studied the Torah Shebe'al Peh. My father taught me Torah, right? And I study Torah every single day of my life. There's nothing special about me. It's not that I have an IQ of 200 because I had an IQ of 200. I can tell you something. No, I just followed the path that the Torah tells us all to follow. Study Torah shebichtav, learn how to read. You have to read properly with ta'amim. Then study Torah shebe'al peh, Mishnayot, Gemara, and study every single day of your life. Take studying seriously. And that's the path. So my truth is based on the Torah. It's an alphabetic truth. Now, I know that in some yeshivot, they de-emphasize the importance of studying Tanakh. And unfortunately, I've been in yeshivot where people don't know how to read Tanakh and they don't know how to read Pesukim in the Torah, but they're studying Gemara. So that tells you that their system of truth is a more metaphysical system of truth. And I would say so. I don't think that there's much dispute as to, they may give different content to the metaphysics that they study, but they still have these metaphysical notions, right? And that's why for them, they need a Gadol. So there's a horizontal world where we're all equal before the Torah, and the Torah stands above all of us equally, and we study the Torah, and the Torah is the source for everything. I need people to tell me there's some things I don't know in the Torah. I'll go to the Hakham. Hakham, can you tell me what the halakha is in this case? I don't know what it is. Now, he cannot make up things on his mind. He has to tell me, the Torah says this, Mishneh Torah, he'll quote this, Perek, this says this and this and this. That's halakha. Okay, so that's a source. That's a source. Or you have a vertical society. In a vertical society, you're analphabetic. You need somebody to tell you what the truth is. And that's why in these societies, you have Daas Torah and Gedolim, because you don't have the right and don't have the ability. Who are the Gedolim? We'll tell you who the Gedolim are. You'll know, because we're going to call it, we have a newspaper called the Ated Ne'eman, we're going to say this person is a Gadol. I want to say just one thing. It used to be in the days of Rabbi Abe H that there was Maran the Shulchan Aruch. They used to refer to the Shulchan Aruch as Maran, properly so, because we accepted, or in the land of Israel, they accepted the Rabbi Yosef Faur as the authority, and they used to refer to him as Maran because he had that special title. Then after Rabbi Abe H passed away, he used to refer to Shulchan Aruch as Maran. Then after he passed away, they started referring to Rabbi Yosef as Maran. Fair enough. Okay, I'm not sure what that means anymore because Maran had a very specific meaning. I love Rabbi Yosef. I study his works all the time. Please do not misinterpret what I'm saying. God forbid. I'm not speaking, God forbid, against Rabbi Yosef. Of course not. But then they started referring to other rabbis as Maran. So every rabbi, every time I turn on the radio in Israel, Maran, Rosh Yeshiva, Ponovich, everybody's Maran. I don't know anymore. Like words are. So now we have a lot of many Gedolim who know what we don't know. And there's all these Marans up there who are going to be now the new authorities for truth and metaphysics, I suppose, as well.
Right. I mean, you really just summed it up really well. I also wanted the audience to get a little bit more on the point of being above, like nobody's above the law. In the context of Tanakh, we see that if you violate, if a priest violates the rules that he has to follow, he loses his position. Same thing with a king. And that should apply to everyone, even to a rabbi, right? Nobody is above the law. I think that's what you were saying. In a vertical society, even the person who is on top of that food chain and the hierarchy, he's not replacing God, but he's kind of the mouthpiece of God. So you can't really question that person, correct? Is that what you're?
You can't question that person because that person, by virtue of having access to the infinite, he's a European mentioned tombs, because he has access to the infinite, and you don't have access to the infinite, and the way you know you don't have access to the infinite, he does, is because he told you so, and many other people told you so. So yes, of course, you can't question him. Who are you? You don't have the mind. You can't understand things that he read all of Plato's Republic when he was 5 years old. So of course, who are you to question him?
Yeah, that's always been one of the most frustrating conversations you could have with people. Because when you finally prove them wrong, they just say, well, you're nobody, and that person is somebody. So therefore, what you say doesn't matter. Even if you're right, you're wrong. That's the problem.
Yes, correct. I mean, but again, I like just putting it, I don't like arguing. I just like presenting. And I think when you realize what happened in Europe with Husserl, which I quoted, and he has a book called The Crisis of European Sciences in Transcendental Phenomenology. It was published in 1936. And there he develops a concept of European humanity, which is tied closely to the scientific spirit that is in the heart of European intellectuals. So in the Haredi world, of course, it's the Ashkenazi rabbis, the Sepharadi rabbis. One of the reasons Sephardim were, Sephardim, I mean, right? There's a lot of racism against Sephardim till today. If you're a Sephardi and you want to have your daughter go to a Haredi school, it's a problem, right? So the point is, you see the parallels, how they have the same attitude. I mean, it's very obvious what's happening, right? You don't have to be a brilliant historian to understand what the model is for the Gadol, and it's fine. Go for it. I'm not against it, but just know what you're doing. This is not Judaism. This is something else. So, when the Mashiach doesn't come and, people are wise and the Mashiach not coming, maybe we should choose the Jewish model instead. I mean, just as a humble suggestion.
And I just want to add, it's not just the Haredi institutions. It's even, I went to elementary school, modern Orthodox Ashkenazi elementary school, and I and many other Sephardic kids who were there did experience, I guess you can call it racism, but it is what it is. It's something that exists, and unfortunately, it's there. We have to do what we can to educate people, and hopefully, we're going to get past all that. So we wanted to get into the last part, which is very important to us and to you, obviously, about your father. And it's the topic. The phenomenon is cancel culture in society today. Your father experienced that. He dedicated his life to reviving and preserving the traditions of Old Sepharad, yet he faced significant challenges and conflicts from the quote-unquote black hat community. Can you share some personal insights into who your father was, what he stood for, and some of the difficulties he encountered in his pursuit for a genuine, pure understanding of tradition? And with that in mind, are you hopeful for the future of Judaism?
Well, let me just start by saying I am very hopeful for the future of Judaism for the reason that I know that intelligence eventually reigns supreme. So I am hopeful. As far as my father, that would be interesting to maybe discuss separately than this podcast. But I do want to give you just a little about my father, some of the experiences I had. There's a Talmudic passage that when one studies Torah in the presence of his teacher, he should be shaking in fear. The only person I've seen this with is my father. He used to take Talmud Torah so seriously that we would want to go to Selichot in the morning. So Haifa, summertime, Selichot was, I don't even know what it was. I think my mind was, I don't know where it was when he would wake me up. But he would wake me up an hour before Selichot. We'd study Torah. And, I better have been awake during the Talmud Torah. There was no there was no lagging off. So literally, he was the epitome of what a real Hakham is. And I think if he spoke to some of my father's other Talmidim, if you came to the class and you weren't on your top, if he used to teach Gemara privately, you weren't in your top form, you didn't remember what he said the last class, you didn't prepare properly, you didn't know how to read. It really was very frightening. I don't know why. You say, what's frightening? He didn't hit anybody, but you just felt such kedusha and such intensity in the study. I remember once I was a little boy, at 3 a.m, we're studying Torah. He woke me up and we're studying Torah. And this is in Haifa again, in my grandparents' house. And this wasp started flying into the room. And I'm a little kid. I got really, naturally scared, but I was like, I'm just keeping my eye on the text and I'm studying and I'm reading and everything was fine. Nothing happened to me, of course, because my father was there and, nothing would happen when we would study Torah. So it was very interesting being raised by my father. There was nothing more important for my father than the Torah, than Talmud Torah. And he took it so seriously. And he was so makpid in the traditions of our Hachamim. There was no such thing as we're having a Gemara class and I misread a word and you go, okay, just keep going. I want to explain to you what it says. No, read it correctly. There was zero tolerance for any mistakes. So he was a very serious Hacham. His knowledge was unbelievable. I just want to give you one story. It's 11:30 at night. I'm now married with Baruch Hashem kids, and I'm studying Torah. I'm in Israel. I'm in a synagogue by myself late at night, and I come across the Sugya in Masechet Yevamot, and Masechet Yevamot is a very difficult Masechet. There are some chapters there where you literally need these diagrams. They have these books with all these diagrams. 10 brothers, 10 whatever. Okay. So I'm studying this really difficult sugya, and I call up my father, and he answers the phone. It's 11:30 at night. He says, yes. I said, look, I'm studying this sugya, and I give him the daf in Masechet Yevamot and where it is, and he stops me. He says, oh, yes, you have this, you're studying this, and you have this and this problem. Let me tell you the answer. And I'm like, I don't know. How on earth did he know that? I was in shock. Because I was sitting there studying for hours and I'm sweating and I'm trying to understand the sugya. And you knew what I didn't tell him what sugya was. I just told him the daf, right? He said, oh, you're studying this sugya and here's your problem. And he gave me the answer. So, so it was quite something growing up with my father and studying Torah with my father. Because of him, I know what real Talmidei Chachamim are. You can't fool me. I just want to say that. When you experience a real Talmidei Chacham, a real Chacham, one of the things that shocked me, and I'm just going to put it out here, when I used to be stand under the chuppah sometimes with my father, and then it'd be Haram Mordechai Eliyahu, Alav Shalom, another special Chacham. So I remember I used to see him and my father discussing Divrei Torah and this, and back and forth discussions, bikiut, tremendous bikiut on both sides, of course. I remember one of the things that shocked me is coming to America and seeing meeting rabbis who didn't have an interest in discussing Divrei Torah. It almost offended me. I would be in a wedding with the rabbi, and I would kind of want to share a idea in the Torah, because this is what I was used to. This is the world I was in, of course. What do? When you're with another Hakham, you discuss Divrei Torah. What are you going to look at your phone and I don't know, say, what happened on Instagram? I don't know what people, I mean, okay, I know what people do, but when you're with a Hakham, Tamid Hakham, of course, you discuss Torah. You want to hear the Torah from the other side. You want to share your Torah. What else is there? What can be more important than that? Like you're standing under the chuppah and they have like the Syrian weddings, they have like an hour and a half of like, like different musics and the marching, and you're standing under the chuppah. Of course, you discuss Divrei Torah. This is what I saw. So I'm like, one of the things that shocked me is like rabbis that are not interested in Torah. And not because it's not because they're not friendly. It's just, it doesn't interest them, like not now. Like it's not so important. So yeah, I was raised with my father. I know what Torah is. I know what a Hacham is. And I'll say it a second time. You can't fool me. That's all.
Beautiful, beautiful. Well, may his memory be a blessing. And I must say, when we were very pleased to discover very recently that, Rav Eli Shaubi and Joey Faur put out this book with Korn Publishing, which is like mainstream, and that's such a great, amazing thing. So if only your father was able to see that, that would be amazing. But this is really, truly a big bracha. And we are so excited that his teachings are going to be in the mainstream, which is
Amen.
unbelievable.
Yep.
Yes, I was very happy. Joey, my son Joey Faur, Eli Shaubi, a friend of my son Joey, they spent a lot of time editing the works, and thank God, Baruch Hashem, it is becoming mainstream. And it's an alternative. It's an alternative to a lot of the things we've been talking about. Because, when I say alternative, also, I don't mean, God forbid, that we somehow compromise, that we're not lenient or strict. No, we just want to follow the ways of the Torah, Harambam, the Gemara, the Gedolim, right? And people are trying other things. They've been trying other things for centuries, and it's not quite leading, to anything good, I guess, right? So I think the Torah of my father is really gonna be out there, and it's gonna be a very positive development in Am Yisrael. I see it happening.
Without a doubt.
Yeah,
without a doubt.
I mean, it definitely influenced us, and we're nowhere near where we should be. But I think that his works definitely trickled down to the little people like us and people we know. It's just like on a daily basis, in many chats that we're in, he's always coming up in conversation. So he has a profound impact already. I think in the last 10 years, he's the most spoken about probably of all. So
I want to share with you one story, and with this we can finish. And my father was, Baruch Hashem, he was so happy. He always felt that God was with him, and he would always say the pasuk Ha-Elohim haro'eh oti me'odi ad hayom hazeh, what Yaakov Avinu tells Yosef before he passes away. God was always with me. God was always guiding me. That's Yaakov Avinu felt that. My father used to say that all the time. So I just want to share with you one pasuk which illustrates this. I saw it so many times with my father. And as you know, there are some people who may not have wanted to read his works. Okay, we put it that way. So he moved to Israel in the mid-90s, and he was an already older, at the age where many professors are beginning to retire. And he's in Israel. He wants to work. So he goes to Bar Ilan University. This is a story. He just goes there. He has his resume, CV, and he goes in looking for a job in the Talmud department. Him and 5,000 other people looking for a job in the Talmud department in Bar Ilan University. I mean, it's impossible to get any professorship in Bar Ilan, let alone in the Talmud department. They have the best Talmudists in the world, of which my father was one of them. But still, he's older, so he goes there with his CV, and he says, "I'm looking for a job in the Talmud department." It's the month of September, so the term already started. Just so you understand, now he has full bitachon in Hashem. He has full bitachon. He knows Hashem is with him. He knows it, right? The same way I'm speaking with you now. He knows Hashem is with him. So it's September. Doesn't matter. He knows Hashem was with him. He's sitting there. He says, where do I apply for a job? So they said, sit down here. He's sitting in the waiting room. He has a CV. Somebody comes out. Rabbi, what are you doing here? My father looks at this person and he recognizes him. My father used to give classes in Brooklyn. He used to have hundreds of people come to the class, including many Ashkenazim. This individual who says, Rabbi, what are you doing here? That individual used to go to my father's classes in Brooklyn. That individual became the head of hiring in Bar Ilan University. So he says, Rabbi, what are you doing here? He says, I'm looking for a job as a Talmud professor. He says, just today, one of our Talmud professors resigned. Wow. And it's the beginning of the term. We need somebody immediately. Are you available immediately?
Wow.
Ha-Elohim haro'eh oti me'odi ad hayom hazeh. That was, my father felt it, he believed it, he experienced it. He was a very happy with the constant presence of Torah and, of course, the constant presence of the writer of the Torah, HaKadosh Baruch Hu.
And even after his passing, you see that Hashem is with him and that the work is starting to get published in ways which are going to go into a lot of people's homes. And, our podcast, we're just trying to do our own small part, trying to bring more influence. And of course, you as a son, you're doing your part and you're giving relentless shiurim and interviews and Instagrams and YouTubes and look, we really, really, really appreciate your time. We know that the Rav's time is you take your time extremely seriously. We appreciate the time that you took out to do this with us. Honestly, I hope that this is not the last time. I would love to do a podcast one time strictly on your father, just to, like a biography of sorts and to go through, because there's so much to learn and to reflect on. His life is just, it's a life that needs to be reflected on, needs to be spoken about, hopefully maybe one day down the road. But in the meantime, I think that the past 2 podcasts that we did together was incredible. I hope that the listeners enjoyed, reflect, and understand that everything we're doing over here, everything we were doing together over here, because we want to see the best for Klal Yisrael. That's it.
Yes, of course, of course. I love the Jewish people. Nothing will make me happier than for Am Yisrael to get closer to the Torah, closer to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And I absolutely know that once we do that, we will bring about the Geulah ourselves. The Geulah will come automatically as a result of what we do to bring the Geulah.
Amen.
Amen.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
And thank you for the opportunity.
And Shavua Tov.
Shavua tov.
Shavua Tov mevorach.